Okay, our second speaker, um, Ukraine has kind of fallen off the major uh, news for a lot of us, but we really, really need an update. So we have Anna Meyer, and she's going to update us on what's going on. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, thank you. So now the war has gone on for over 3 months, and yet again for almost a third time in this 3 months war, the kind of the character of the conflict have changed almost dramatically from the first kind of strategic surprise attempt by Russia to just overwhelm Ukraine on every front possible. When that didn't work, they started go on use like regular tank battles on multiple fronts. Now they concentrated down to a few places in the east and the Donbas, and now we see more of something that looks more like a World War I scenario. You have pitch fights in trenches and artillery duels going back and forth, and the number of casualties are thankfully diminishing, so to speak, but the sheer amount of material need, I'm especially talking about artillery ammunition and stuff like that, is going up dramatically. Now it's becoming a war of attrition, and the Western help is really starting to come to the front of Ukraine. And so militarily, Ukraine is in probably a better spot now than it's been ever in the war, because now all of a sudden it's starting to be almost a stalemate. Ukraine is starting to get advanced weapons. They are starting to get like things like missiles to use against ships, anti-ship missiles and stuff. They got from Ukraine, from Denmark, they got Harpoon missiles. They got another set of missiles from Sweden, and they got from several other countries. They got advanced missiles for attacking ships. So all of a sudden, Odessa, that used to be seen as the weak point that the Russia could land and stuff, that probably never going to happen. Russia would never get a chance to go close to the coast again. And now the threat to Ukraine has gone from being militarily threatened by Russia to now be a war of economy. Now it's a war of attrition. Which economy will implode first? Which country will stop functioning? Russia, due to sanctions and depletion of resources they put in the war, or Ukraine, thanks to just being so vulnerable and being so overwhelmed and having so much problems. And that is now I think the most burning issue when it comes to the conflict itself. And there we can see that now the Western world, we put in more than 5 billion a month into Ukraine, and we need to continue to do that until this conflict ends. Otherwise, Ukraine is going to implode. We basically have to keep the whole economy afloat, because Ukraine they don't take in much in form of taxes. The economy has gone down 40, maybe even 50%, so almost only half the GDP. And that means that we have to basically keep the Ukraine government budget running. And so far, the Biden administration and the European and other Western allies, we pumped in significant amount of money. Now the $40 billion, and half of that will be kind of monetary aid to the Ukraine government and humanitarian aid, and the other half will be weapons and ammunition and other military supplies. And if we can keep that up and top it up and keep it up over the next 6 months, then Ukraine might prevail in this. And that's what the Ukrainian government themselves starting to project. There is a chance for Ukraine to prevail in this, and that Russia will be the one who simply break down first. So that's on the military side. And to be honest, now I'm not that worried about that part, so to speak. Ukraine can hold on. If they get the resources, they can actually hold off Russia fairly well, and they would not be overwhelmed or invaded in much more, so to speak. It's rather a question of can they retake and how much territory can they retake. But now there are other things. I'm just going to let Mini down here, so I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. now there's other things to worry about that will be, I think, needs to be really thought about, and that's the global consequences of this conflict, and especially when it comes to food and the food situation and the food crisis in the world, because there's these huge shortage of the things that Ukraine and Russia produce, which is a lot of it is food stuff, grain and fertilizer and a whole bunch of agricultural things, from things we eat to things that we need to farm and agricultural business need everywhere in the world in order to function. And that means that food prices will go up significantly. And we haven't seen much of the effect of that yet, because the grain that was going to go to market is now sitting rotting in the Ukraine. And we're talking millions of tons of grains, sunflower seeds and fertilizer and a whole bunch of other stuff they produce that is not sitting rotting in or being bombed into oblivion in Ukraine. And when that was supposed to be consumed in 5 to 6 months to a year, that's when the prices will hit. And that is going to make the world a lot more difficult to govern, and there will be a lot of more people falling into absolute poverty in the next year for this. And that is something that we need to, so we not only need to help Ukraine, we need to start thinking about other parts of the world that needs help too, and how we're going to deal with this. But it seems like the Biden administration is at least that they're thinking ahead, and they seem to plan about it. And I also we need to give some credit to the Republicans for once, because it seems like one of the few issues that the Republicans haven't caused a lot of problems with, meaning Biden have gotten his will through, and the most of the legislation and the stuff that Congress needs to take a decision on seems to just sail through Congress and the Senate. But in some reason it seems to be like for once it like we the Democrats and the Biden administration who have the military industrial complex on its side, because they are the ones that produce a lot of the stuff that we need to send to Ukraine. So for once they are now on our side. We have those that we normally have on the Republican side. They're now agreeing with the White House policy. So that's probably one of the reasons that the Republicans don't dare to vote against their biggest donors, historically biggest donors, so to speak. And then there's one other aspect of the war that is really starting to take hold, and that is I would say the really advanced stuff when it comes to IT technology, the networked war. We talked in military circles, they talked about that since the Gulf War, the first Gulf War 25 years ago or 30 years ago. But that is now being, the Ukraine-Russia war is the first war when really becomes a war of internet, modern computer technology. And one of the things that really you can see that on the battlefield is that before you used to have large formations. When you used artillery, for instance, you based a lot of artillery, you grouped it together, and then you shot at the enemy, so you get an effect, so to speak, a really good effect. So you co-located things because you wanted to keep the communications tight. That made it a lot easier to give orders, to coordinate things. You needed to have things physical and close by, so to speak, so officers could talk to the crew of artillery pieces and stuff like that. That is now going away. In the Ukraine, you base one artillery piece here and another one cannon howitzer kilometers away or miles away in some other direction. And then you use smartphone apps or computer networks. So when you need to have artillery shells landing on a Russian site somewhere, then you can simply network and figure out which howitzers to use at that moment. And you can regroup them continuously and shoot from every direction. And there is a benefit of that, is that the Russians who want to shoot back, because what you do in the military terms is that you use radar and other technology to figure out where the enemy is shooting from, and then you shoot back as quickly as possible. So that's why you have to regroup. But the Ukrainians are smart enough, they're coming from everywhere. And that makes it really hard for Russia, who is 20 years behind, because they're still using big formations, which means that the Ukrainians can shoot at Russian positions and knock out a lot of them. Russians have to shoot at lots of places, maybe 20, 30 places in order to get the same effect. And that is much more harder to coordinate, and it takes a lot more ammunition, and it hurts the Russians more than the Ukrainians. So there's a bunch of this new warfare technology. It's both tactics and technology combined that really changes how things. They have small units that drive around on quad bikes with anti-tank missiles on them, and fancy little GPS trackers and stuff like that, so they can keep track of it. And they use fancy AI software to figure out where to go, so they can cover the most distance, where to flee when they get shot at and stuff like that. So there's a lot of this modernization that goes on in secret. And they also use lots and lots of drones on both sides, but drones is only half. The other half is to connect the drones, so you can collect the information, you can guide them, and you can kind of verify what they're doing using smart IE technology. So those are some of the things that are kind of happening right now. So I should not babble anymore. So please, questions or yeah. Okay, good. That was either totally confusing or everybody understood everything. I covered all the bases. So, yeah.
Looks like Constance has a question.
Okay, please.
So at this point, you know, if one was going to direct resources, donations or whatever, where do you think what is the most effective way to do that?
I think it's government to government. I think it needs to be from high up, so to speak. So if the U.S. government and the European Union and other big donors can coordinate things, because one of the big bottlenecks is logistics, because the routes in and out of it. So because they need both money and they also need items. And the problem, the logistics is the really, meaning in order to just take, if you were supposed to take a significant amount of what they need in 1 week, you need 20,000 trucks to get it into the Ukraine. And there is not that many trucks in Europe that can take it. So logistics is the really tricky bit. So I think that in order to coordinate the logistics, there needs to be very few organizations that do it. So if Poland and Romania and so on, if they can coordinate, and Hungary that has the physical borders to it, and so European Union and the Biden administration, so to speak, most things need to be coordinated at the top level, so they can know which container to put it in even before it reach Europe, or when somewhere in Germany or in Poland, and then just ship that, and Ukraine knows what's in what container and stuff. Because so logistics, so that's why I think that it's better to that we pay taxes or somehow give money to make sure that our governments have enough money so they can pump in the resources needed for the Ukraine, so to speak. So therefore, I think it's if we are supportive of the war effort, so to speak, from a more public government perspective, I think that will work the best. Because also Ukraine don't want to be open with what they need. They want to be able to tell in secret and then get containers with stuff that Russia don't know what's in them. Because Russia will target them as soon as they go over the border. And if it's something juicy, they will knock it out with a cruise missile or something. So it's secrecy. It's also important. We should not tell the Russians what container contains what, so to speak, and then spread it out and put it in equal portions. So whatever gets knocked out, we don't take everything of one sort, so to speak. So whether it's things for hospital equipment and stuff, don't put all of that in one container. You spread it out and mix it up and then send it across the border.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Chuck Reuter.
I'm here.
Did you have a question?
First of all, I got a couple of comments to make.
Yeah.
A question, then a comment. I read somewhere that the African people depend on the Ukrainian wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
To some degree, yes. Ukraine and the scary thing is that Ukraine and Russia combined are the two largest
Oh.
producers of food. So Ukraine alone supply about 400 million people with their basic need of grains and most of their base staples in their diets. So over 400 million people are directly dependent on Ukraine food production for their survival. And most of that is in the Middle East and certain parts of Africa and certain parts of Asia. But primarily countries like Egypt, Sudan, and other parts in Africa, like Nigeria and some other countries that are have problems with it. And the other problem is that there is also low food production in India and other parts of the world too, due to climate change. So this is and Russia itself. So it's a compounded problem, so to speak. It's many things at once that makes it problematic.
Okay, my comment is simply this. I have a hunch you didn't get very many questions because of the way you present the data. It is so complete.
Thank you.
You don't have any questions. I mean, it's so
Thank you.
wonderful.
That used to be my job to put summary like this and then tell politicians and top civil servants and stuff like this. So that it used to be my job to compound like
You're very good at it.
things. Thank you. Thank you.
Bill.
I'm unmuted now. Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. So because you know, we're all up in politics here, I have a question, and it's going to be kind of a devil's advocate-y kind of question, just because I want to hear your response to it. There's a lot of people out there who say things like, we need to take care of ourselves here at home first. And then you say something like, we're spending $40 billion to go help a small country in Europe fight a country that's not America's problem. That's the, you know, like whatever. What's the response to that? What is your response to that?
I think it's the same. If you go back in history, it's the same reason that America needed to intervene in World War II. And if we believe in democracy and if we believe in freedom from tyranny and so on, then this case is probably as clear cut as it can be. That's on an ideological level, but that might not be good enough. But then we have the other argument is that if we want a world that is functioning reasonably well, so to speak, we need to do something, because if we don't willing to do something, meaning we're talking 500 million people that will literally go without food. And then we have other things like fertilizer. If you're worried and someone worried that the pump cost of fuel or the inflation is a problem now, if we ignored a conflict of this size and this magnitude, this problem is going to get 10 times worse in a few. And also because the other thing that might happen is that we will, meaning we didn't do anything. Russia started this in 2012. And then they in 2014, sorry, they started in 2014. That was, we did some, the Obama administration in the West kind of reacted by giving a little bit of a slap on the hand saying, oh, no, you should not do that. And we had a little bit of sanctions and we helped Ukraine enough to just lock down the conflict. And that was okay, and we thought that was good enough. And then came Trump, who did nothing and just used the conflict to his own personal gain a few times, and we just ignored the problem for 4 years. And that bolstered Russia enough to try and just grab Ukraine in one go. And that's what Russia is trying to do right now, is to just put the conflict on a back burner a little bit and see if we tire. And if we tire, they will go for Poland next time, or Estonia, or the Baltics in 5-6 years. We will just embolden them, and they will make new tanks and get a little bit, and then attack someone else in Eastern Europe, whatever, and just cause it. So it's, I think it's the same reason we had to fight Hitler and so on during World War II. It's both on ideological terms, but also practical terms.
I want to get back to that practical question. Actually, you said if we do nothing, if we let Putin just win, all the inflation, all these,
Yeah.
you know, the gas increases, the food cost increases, that'll get 10 times worse. How do we know that? What's a
We-
succinct way to spell that out for someone who's not really maybe tuned into this stuff at a
we
deep
can say
level?
that if they screw up other countries that are part of, meaning Ukraine is a fairly small economy. If they start attacking economies that are 4 or 5 times bigger, what if they go after and disturb Europe's economy even more, so to speak? And that then we're talking something that in Ukraine is like, what is it, like 1.5% of world GDP. If they went after and attacked Europe and we would do nothing, European Union, that is 20% of the world economy and produces so much stuff that we need. And you don't need to make it economy collapse. You just need to nag it in the corner, so to speak, and also to influence us in our elections and stuff like that, and embolden Russia. I think we need to send the message to Putin that this type of criminality should not stand. If we don't do anything when they literally just butcher people every day, thousands of them, and we do nothing, so to speak, meaning then we don't stand for much at all. And so I think for moral reasons and legal reasons and reasons that we need to be a world leader. And it's not only us. We also need to tell the Biden administration and other responsible politicians here that they need to push Europe to do equally much, because they have a stake in this that is higher than America. But so we need to coordinate it and keep doing it. And to be honest, it's not that much it's something that we can, meaning we have given equal amount of money to if we take Israel and Afghanistan and 10 other countries, we've given similar amount of money to them without them being at war at all, so to speak. So it's not an enormous amount of money. It's something we can actually save that, so to speak, and we can actually take part of it from our own military budget and stuff and use it, and down the line we can replace equipment we have and stuff in the future, and we also get a chance to learn. And now I'm getting a little bit of devil's advocate and cynical back. We need to be there to learn how to figure out how to fight a modern 21st century war, and that alone, defense hawks and people that are really into this, that they need to understand we need to be there on the ground and both teach Russia and lesson, but also to learn. The Ukrainians are now the best war fighters in 21st century. They are figuring this out for us. We need to help them and we need to learn from them. So I think there's 3 reasons to do it: moral, political,
awesome.
ethical, and technical, and practical reasons for economic reasons, but also from military tactics and strategy reasons we need to.
Okay, one last question, Brian Nash.
Yeah, I think your last response to what Bill just said was awesome. It was incredibly thorough. I think.
Oh, thank you.
No, I don't mean to push back in any way, shape, or form, but I do want to just kind of call out one of the parts that you said.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of turning this into like a food shortage type issue, things like that. You know, I think it's important when we think about the people that generally are not for this. A lot of them tend to not be particularly informed about even domestic politics, let alone foreign politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to talk about the idea that you already don't like $6 a gallon gas. I've had numerous people tell me, oh, it's going to 10 by the end of the summer.
Yep.
You're clearly concerned about cost, and that's a real issue, right? If you can tie this to the food supply and the competition for resources, if that area falls, if other areas end up falling subsequently,
Mm-hmm.
the $10 gas isn't going to matter because you're going to be hungry.
Yep.
You know, and that's really kind of the key to this whole thing.
Yep.
Is just turn this into the economic situation that you know, and I'm not saying this to be a politician, but the Republicans have turned this entire election cycle into a referendum on inflation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose to actively do things that are going to cause prices to go up, you're not helping the problem.
Yep.
So just keep the basic, and that will, even if they don't agree, at least there's an obvious connection there. And I just want to make sure I reemphasize that because I think it's super important.
Yeah, and I want to kind of add to it, saying that if we don't stop Putin and Russia from doing something like this, China will jump on on Taiwan in a few years,
Yep.
and that means that Taiwan is now producing 2/3 of all high-tech computer equipment and chips and stuff like that. If you think it's expensive to invest in a computer now, wait until Taiwan goes up in smoke.
Turn it into a cost conversation.
Yeah, and meaning there's a lot of things. So now we have a chance to tell dictators and other wannabes who want to threaten us that we take this seriously. And so we have a chance, and we should, in a way, we should be thankful that the Ukrainians are taking this fight, because we don't have to send Americans to die there. We can. That's why I think we have the moral obligation to help them to fight. They want to fight, and they're able to. So we should enable them to.
I wish I felt like the people that are making these arguments were swayed by moral arguments.
Yeah,
but quite frankly, I don't see it.
I agree. Yes, yeah.
So like I said, if you're not going to win on moral arguments, you have to hit them in the pocketbook, and that's really the answer to this whole process.
Yeah, I agree. I think pocketbook and the fact that we need to learn how to fight wars in the 21st century, those arguments might help with the typical Republicans, so to speak.